May 10th, 1987, almost 30 years ago. Probably a very insignificant date. Probably not a whole lot of people even remember where they were at or what they were doing that day. But for the family of Patricia Green, that's a very tragic day. That's the day that her body was found on Sumter Highway. She had been murdered. We had responded, the Sheriff's Department responded to the scene. We processed the scene. We actually had the crime scene tech, Tommy Mills, who back 30 years ago processed that scene. We have the investigator, Bill Simpson, that one of the investigators who responded to the scene with us today. Both of these officers remember that very well. Not only was it tragic to the family of Miss Green, but also to these investigators and crime scene people that responded that day and processed a very gruesome scene. Our cold case people went back and found the evidence that Tommy Mills, who was the crime scene tech at that time, processed the scene, found the evidence they put in, and we took that evidence and submitted it to our lab, where now we do have DNA, where now we have the top-notch lab that you can go anywhere. And our DNA people matched up the DNA found at the crime scene that day to Phillip Johnson of Sumter. Johnson's currently serving multiple life sentences for 4 murders that he committed in Sumter County. While we had our murder of Miss Green, Sumter County was having a rash of murders. They had 4 murders over a very short period of time, all within close vicinity. Sumter County was able to make an arrest, and Mr. Johnson was arrested for those murders and sentenced to multiple life sentences. Our investigators, once they matched the DNA, went and interviewed Mr. Johnson in prison, and he confessed. He confessed to killing Miss Green. He gave information in his confession that only the killer would have done. Our cold case squad has solved another one. That's Patricia Green right here. Someone that we didn't forget, that the system didn't forget, that her family never forgot her, and we didn't forget her either.